Good evening. On behalf of Dr. Keith Flamer, President Superintendent, Julia Morrison, Vice President of Administrative Services, and Marty Coelho, Executive Director of College Advancement and the CR Foundation, we welcome you to this community meeting. A few housekeeping items. Please keep your screen on mute. And during the presentation, if you would like to ask a question, use the chat feature and the questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. So at this time, I'd like to welcome Dr. Keith Flamer.
Thank you, Cynthia. If you can go to that first agenda screen, thank you. So what you have in front of you is I'll just give a general welcome and introductions. And we have our Vice President for Administrative Services and Budget, Julia Morrison, to talk to you in detail about what we're seeing challenges with the budget, but also some of the very major projects we have that are going on in the Eureka campus. But also our Executive Director of College Advancement and Foundation, Mr. Marty Coelho, will also give a foundation update. And at the tail, right after Mr. Coelho's presentation, we have Paul Chan, who's our Director of Institutional Research and Effectiveness. And I've asked him to just give a snapshot or a thumbnail about what we are seeing in terms of our data, in terms of our targets and our demographics. But prior to getting started, I want to acknowledge the fact that my friend from HSU, Dr. Tom Jackson, had a major loss in his family a couple of days ago. His son passed away. And I want everyone to know that everyone at CR, our thoughts and prayers are with Tom, his wife Mona, and his surviving daughter. I know this is a very hard time, and I want everyone to know that we think of Tom and his loss, and this is dramatic. A parent's worst nightmare, and I feel for him very much, and what's going on with Tom's family and what's going on with HSU, because all this does fall down with it. And with that, I want to acknowledge we have two Board of Trustees members in the audience. I think Trustee Danny Kelly and Trustee Sally Biggin are in our virtual audience. And I want to thank them both for their undying support of this institution. And with that, Cynthia, let's go on to our first update from Julia Morrison.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight. First, I will talk a little bit about the state budget, just an overview. When the governor released his January proposal in January, earlier this year, it was a very different picture. We were looking at having a 2.29% COLA, or cost of living adjustment, and a projected $6 billion general fund surplus. Then COVID-19 hits, the pandemic causes a negative impact on the state's economy, and suddenly we have a projected deficit of $54 billion for the state. The governor's May revise includes an 8% revenue deficit for community colleges, and as talks between the governor and then between the Assembly and the Senate finally coming to a final budget in June, it was a little bit of a different outlook for the community colleges. Still not good, but the adopted state budget maintained apportionment at the 2019-20 levels with no COLA, but in order to balance the budget, instead of getting cuts to our spending, we are now being faced with apportionment deferrals. So then taking all that information and putting it into CR's 2021 adopted budget. And Cynthia, can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. For the college's 2021 state revenue, we're looking at earning, not receiving, but earning $29.8 million, and that's based off of the student-centered funding formula, or the SCFF as we call it for short. And that's the amount that was included in the July 2020 advanced apportionment report. And the alternative would be the hold harmless scenario, which for College of the Redwoods currently, the student-centered funding formula is still favorable for our district, given our FTS and our different success metrics, as well as our supplemental counts. However, looking at this picture, keep in mind that we're going to be facing for our district about $5 million in deferred payments. So we'll be getting payments from the state July through February of 2021. July through January, and then February through June, we won't be getting any money coming in from the state. Supposedly what's going to happen is it's going to be deferred, and we'll get those payments starting in July through about October of the next fiscal year. And in order to meet that operational gap, we're carefully looking at our cash flow to see if and when we will need to participate in a TRAN, or a tax and revenue anticipation note, which is just some short-term borrowing to get us through with our cash situation. So looking at this, you can see that we have in our 2020-21 column, we're looking at having our revenue of about 31.8 million. Then with our expenditures, with our salaries and benefits, we did have to do some hiring freezes as well as layoffs and reduction to the associate faculty budget. If you look at the 2019-20 salary and benefit amounts compared to 2020-21, you see that there's a pretty big of a decrease there. And then looking down, kind of going through the numbers, total expenses looking to be about 28.6 million. Then with our transfers out that are planned, that's a $2.785 million figure. That does include some revenue contingent transfers out. And what that means is if and when we do fully recognize or receive our revenue, that we'll be able to do those additional transfers out. And in this scenario, I apologize, at least in my screen, it looks like it's a little bit cut off, but we ended up with a 9% estimated ending fund balance for the 2020-21 year. And if you look at the budget forecast for 2021-22 and 2022-23, we're starting to, we're assuming a hold harmless in those years, just because of not knowing what our FTS is going to be looking like and not knowing how our student success factors will also be looking in those out years. So there, with ending fund balance, let me see if I can get this a little bit bigger. There we go. So budget forecast 2021-22, looking at a 7.3% ending fund balance, and then in the 2022-23, a 5.6% ending fund balance. And next screen, please. So now I'll cover a little bit about our current and future capital outlay projects. We currently have 3 state-funded projects, a utility infrastructure and replacement project, or we shortly refer to it as the UIR, and that's about a $37 million project. Our creative arts drop and replace project, or CA or creative arts, is about $24 million project, and our physical education complex drop and replace project, or PE, is about a $69 million project. And then a future project that we are working on is a new student housing project. So going back to the UIR project, this one is to upgrade and replace some of the infrastructure at the college, the stuff that you don't really think about, electrical, cabling. One big thing that has been completed so far for the most part is a leach field. We were operating a wastewater treatment facility, and it was very old, it was very outdated, it was very hard to maintain the levels that we needed to maintain to not incur fees because of the water. Not that it was anything bad, it was just the amounts were just very hard for us to maintain at the right level. So we did start our leach field. We are currently using it. Also, some of the other aspects of this project are new fire alarms, putting up backup power to some of our critical infrastructure, like our technology, so that when power goes out, it keeps going. And those pieces have been complete, and actually we've had a couple power outages now where they worked like they were supposed to. So as far as our, our internet and our web and our data went, we didn't go down. our Creative Arts Drop and Replace project, it is currently in the, moving into the construction phase. Hopefully construction will be starting early this coming year, so early 2021. And our physical education complex drop and replace project is moving from the preliminary phase to the working drawings phase. And it looks like we won't be starting construction in that project till probably early 2022. And if we can go forward for the next few slides, there are some renderings of the creative arts and the PE projects. So Cynthia, I guess we can slowly go through some of the next pictures. So this is the Creative Arts building, and it's actually not a building, it's going to be a complex. So I believe it's comprised of at least 2 separate buildings. So there you're kind of seeing where the 2 converge. Next slide, please. And here's just another angle of the complex. Next slide, please. And this is kind of inside, in between the buildings. You'll have some nice overhangs and some open areas. Next slide, please. And more of the kind of the open area of the complex. And next slide. Here is a rendering of the new physical education or gymnasium building. And next slide. And the same structure, just from another angle. Next slide, please. And here we have the field house from one angle. And next slide, please. Thank you. And here is another angle of the field house. So the final kind of project I talked about was our student housing project, and that we are working with Servitas. They're a group out of Texas. They're helping us manage the program. We are working with the Scion group, who's doing a market feasibility study, and that study is going to help us know kind of what number of beds this project can support, and what does it look like the affordable rent rate would look like. We're also looking at working with KTGY to provide the design, the architecture of the project. And it's looking like we will hopefully finish what's called phase 1 and be ready for move-in. It will be spring of 2024. We might have to go to phase 2. It just depends on how big of a facility we're going to end up having. It might be 1 building and it might be 2 buildings. So the phase 2 would be the 2nd building if we need that amount of new beds. And that is all for me.
Thanks, Julia. Good evening. I'm Marty Coelho. I'm the Executive Director of the College of the Redwoods Foundation. The mission of our foundation is to support the Redwoods Community College District by establishing partnerships and collaborations that benefit our students, local businesses, and the community. Our focus is on generating resources to promote student enrollment, student success, economic development, community health, and equitable opportunity. We thought it might be helpful to present a few of the projects that the CR Foundation is currently working on. De-escalation trainings. This summer, the CR Foundation partnered with our Workforce and Community Education program to deliver de-escalation trainings for no cost to frontline employees who are having to deal with an agitated public. The trainings were provided to retail, hospitality, grocery, childcare, and city and county frontline employees. Currently, our foundation is discussing how to provide these trainings to small businesses and nonprofits in Del Norte County. The Wear a Mask campaign. A countywide Wear a Mask campaign was launched in Humboldt County on August 14th. The Wear a Mask campaign was developed by a work group of the volunteer COVID Economic Resilience Consortium, better known as the CERC. College of the Redwoods is a member. The CERC is comprised of economic development and business support organizations and was established to share updates, coordinate resources, and ensure consistent communication to area businesses and to the public at large. College of the Redwoods took a leadership role in developing the Wear a Mask campaign. The campaign is designed to encourage the consistent use of masks to better protect the health of the community and to slow the spread of the virus. We are currently finishing our Spanish version of the campaign and hope to launch it this coming week. Community discussions on policing. the College of the Redwoods Foundation and the Humboldt Area Foundation are working together to support a series of community conversations on policing. The purpose of these conversations would be to establish ongoing and meaningful dialogue to share interests between the public, people of color, and law enforcement on improving policing, and to create a process where the group's identified goals and outcomes can be supported and achieved. Fall scholarships. We are currently in the process of accepting scholarship applications from our CR students. This fall semester, we will be awarding 100 scholarships valued at $60,000. Then come the spring, we will be awarding an additional 150 scholarships valued at $65,000. We appreciate the generosity of individuals, organizations, and businesses with the Humboldt and Del Norte County who have given to support the Foundation's scholarship program over all these years. That's the Foundation update, and thanks for your time. Paul?
Good evening, everybody. Let me pull up my couple of slides here. Dr. Flamer asked me to share a little bit about what we call completers and some of our students who are finishing up their work at the college. This first slide is looking at degrees and certificates that we have awarded over the last few years. And a few things that we wanted to point out was, first of all, the transfer degrees, a huge raise of 59% increase this year over last year for our transfer degrees. I'll mention that transfer degrees are different than our normal AAAS degrees because we have articulated with UCs and CSUs to make sure that all of the coursework that the students have done here will transfer to the CSU or UCs. You take a little bit of a gamble with your coursework transferring if you get just a regular AAAS degree. So the ADTs or transfer degrees are very popular, as you can see, with students. We just started those in the last 4 or 5 years, and they've steadily increased until a huge increase this last year. A lot of that is probably due to AB 705, which the state has told us that we're going to skip remedial education and put students directly into transfer level math and English. The hope was that that would help students complete their degrees and certificates at a much quicker pace. There was a little bit of concern that that might affect our course success rates, but that has not been proved to be the case. Our success rates have stayed the same, and yet we've managed to help a large number of students graduate with their degrees. When we had the state had first asked us to create, you see the last 2 columns, a set standard and target. The set standard is a minimum that the college has set for itself. If it drops below that set standard, then we need to look at what's going on and make adjustments to get our numbers back up. The target was a long-term goal, and with this last year, we've far surpassed even our target in the transfer degrees. The psychology and business administration degrees of transfer degrees remain the most popular. They have been pretty much throughout the years that we've offered transfer degrees. And ECE and history are the 3rd and 4th ranked degrees that we offer. AAAS degrees continue to rise, not as fast as the transfer degrees, but they also have risen to the point that they are also above our target. And again, this is probably because of AB 705. The top AAAS degrees remain behavioral and social sciences, science exploration, humanities and communications, nursing, and science are our top 5 AAAS degrees. Certificates have kind of fluctuated a little bit, and when we looked into this as an institutional effectiveness committee trying to figure out what's going on there, we discovered that our LVN certificates are an 18-month certificate. So we're going to issue about 35 certificates every other year. So that explains kind of the ups and downs of our certificate count. So taking that into account, our certificate numbers are still doing relatively well. Let me move on to one last category here. So every year, the state sends out a survey to students who are enrolled in the career tech education programs. It could be AJ, nursing, welding, machine tech, construction tech, all of those applied tech fields. Every college sends a list of students who have quit coming for whatever reason. Maybe they graduated, maybe they obtained their goals, even if it wasn't a certificate. We send a list of those students to a group in Santa Rosa that the state has authorized to send out a survey. And the question that we are keeping an eye on as one of the indicators that we report back to the state is how many students after they left the college secured a job that is closely related to their program of study. And it was very exciting to see that the College of the Redwoods has far exceeded the statewide average in the very closely related to their program of study, 60.8% as compared to the statewide average of 45.7%. It was also a very large jump for us this year over last year. So that was really encouraging. Oh, I should also mention, back on these degrees and certificates, Julia, Vice President Morrison, mentioned the SCFF funding. These degrees and certificates play a role in the funding for SCFF, our completers. So hopefully our large increase in transfer degrees will help those numbers over the coming years, especially if we can keep those numbers up. Our FTES this year has been down a bit, so we'll be depending on these transfer degrees staying up in order to help that SCFF figures. And that is all that I have. So I'll turn it back over.
Thank you all. Our Vice President for Instruction could not make it tonight, but she did ask me to mention two things to this group. One is our spring reopening plan, but also the work that we are accomplishing with our education master plan process. So in terms of our spring reopening or spring operational plan, if you all remember for fall, we were mostly online. So we had about 86% of our courses were online in the fall, about 14% were in person or hybrid. But what we found at the end of at the beginning of fall semester, that particular move really did marginalize our most challenged students. Those students who are in areas that don't have very good Wi-Fi or technology challenged, but also students who really in their minds cannot learn online but need a face-to-face contact. And we found that we really did a disservice to these students because of the pandemic. We had to make the choices we had to make, but the unintentional consequence was we did hurt students that need that face-to-face contact. So what we have decided to do in the spring opening plan is to increase the number of sections that we would offer in person or via hybrid, which is both online and in person, a combination. So again, I mentioned that we had 14% in the fall. We would like to get at least 30% in the spring. And then we have our deans that are going to work very closely with the faculty to see if we can hit that particular target. Our fundamental underlying premise, however, is to make sure that whatever we do in person, whatever courses we offer in person, we want to make sure that our students, our faculty, and our staff are extremely safe when we increase that number. So again, the target is 30%. If we don't hit that target because we're not comfortable safety-wise, then we won't do it. But we really want to do what we can to put more face-to-face courses at our KT site and our outlying areas as well. And the second thing I want to mention is that we are engaged in a revised education master plan process. And we were already going to start that process, but the pandemic really accelerated our need to make this move. And why is that? It's because the pandemic is forcing us to really rethink or reimagine what College of the Redwoods looks like in 10 or 15 years. Because we know that we will never return to the old normal, whatever one would define that. But also we're finding that there's a lot more competition for the courses and the degrees that CR offers traditionally. We have Google and Hulu and Amazon and other private entity players looking at the low-hanging fruit in their minds and saying, well, since they're a business, they may be able to offer these courses in a much more economical and a faster way to do it. Now, I don't know if that is true or not, but that is the assumption that we're seeing. We're seeing a plethora of additional private businesses offering courses that CR would normally offer. And so we have to do our best to meet that challenge, but also to see how we can reposition CR that we are more vibrant and more relevant in 10 or 15 years. And the other thing that we're seeing, and it makes perfect sense of why businesses want a piece of this education pie, is because in a global market, it's about $10 million worth, $10 billion worth of educational monies out there. So we have businesses that are leaner and can probably deliver faster, and they want a piece of that $10 trillion. So we have our work cut out for us, but we're always going to focus on what's best for our students and our society and our local job market. We're going to put a major emphasis into career education because we want to be part of the economic solution in California and not be part of the problem. So we are working extremely hard to reimagine what CR would look like in 10 or 15 years. This is going to be a difficult conversation, but it's one that we have to be able to survive moving forward. And with that, Cynthia, would you open it up to questions and concerns?
I don't see any questions in the chat. If anybody has any questions, now would be a good time.
Okay. We have Cindy Hooper here. Because Cindy, do you have any questions for us or any of the trustees?
I guess, Keith, this is Danny Kelly. I guess I often wonder if there are good ways for the community to get in contact with you to maybe learn more about these issues, to provide feedback if they have any. What's the best way to reach out to College of the Redwoods and to try to participate without gumming up the process or getting involved in maybe ways that slows the administration down and
Thank you.
doesn't provide value?
Thank you, Trustee Kelly. That's a terrific question. Thank you very much for it. I would encourage anyone in our community to send me an email or just call me because there are some things that I can answer, but I would always ask for if someone has questions that I can answer through our administration. But anyone has suggestions and ideas that we can put into the appropriate venue internally, I'd really appreciate it. I'd love to have contact with our community.
I have a question.
Trustee Biggin, yes, ma'am.
First, I want to compliment the staff for the excellent presentation. I really appreciated the slides. I even did a screenshot of a couple of them because I thought that information was, really useful. But I noticed that this is being recorded. Will it be saved like on our YouTube channel? Because there may the opportunities for community members to watch it, and I found it so informative. And really, kind of simplified, some of the basic elements of the district. So, something like a YouTube channel where it could be watched over again, might be valuable.
Thank you, Trustee Biggin. I'm going to lean on my right-hand person, Cynthia Petrucia, to make sure that we can do that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Then if not, then we will go ahead and post this, or actually we will not, but Cynthia will post this on the YouTube channel. And I really appreciate my staff doing such a hard work, such great hard work to get us going, and to keep us moving forward. I couldn't do this job without them, and they are just worth their weight in gold. So thank you very much. And with that, please have a very good evening. And we have Thursday night football playing, and my Chicago Bears are playing, so I'm going to go root them on with a whiskey sour. So anyway, thank you very much and have a good evening.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you, everybody.
you.
Thank you.